Hello, I'm Richard Gisbert, and you're at The Listening Post. This week, the feud on the American airwaves.
Fox News Channel will never restrain itself from incitement to murder and terrorism.
And the corporate masters who have seen enough. Two Muslim women, both murder victims, but only one is a media martyr. The Brazilian television host under investigation for what police are calling ratings-driven murders. And social networking and the socially inept.
I didn't publish any new pictures of my cat either, but I did open 2 new Twitter accounts.
There are few ratings battles as hard-fought as the fight for the millions of Americans who tune in to watch the evening news every night. Beginning in 2005, the battle for viewers got personal between two cable TV personalities, Keith Olbermann of MSNBC and Bill O'Reilly of Fox News. Their fight was about much more than just ratings. The two channels have come to reflect and shape the political views of Americans, with MSNBC on the left and Fox lining up on the right. The channels are owned by two huge global corporations, General Electric and News Corp. And as the war of words and images heated up this summer, the corporate CEOs decided it was time to step in and exercise some editorial control. Their attempts to call a truce between Olbermann and O'Reilly may have brought rhetorical temperatures down somewhat, but they've also provoked some searching questions about corporate control of American news media. That's where we begin this week's News Divide. An on-air battle, the corporate attempts to call the shots and to control just what gets said on the American airwaves.
Fact or fiction, and Bill O'Reilly is in big trouble.
NBC, which is in the tank, dishonest, has been dishonest, and doesn't deserve any credibility. If you're working for them...
It was a good old-fashioned feud. A couple of broadcasting blowhards who, in a way, were made for each other.
Well, for years now, Keith Olbermann, who is the dominant anchor at MSNBC, has been punching up at Bill O'Reilly, the top-rated anchor at Fox News Channel.
He keeps saying things that make you stop and wonder. Did someone sneak into Fox News and write that thing he just said in order to make him sound like a complete imbecile?
As Olbermann himself has made clear, he started going after O'Reilly because he was in third place, and O'Reilly was the guy who was dominating at that hour.
Fox News Channel will never restrain itself from incitement to murder and terrorism. Not until its profits begin to decline, when its growth stops.
It wasn't too hard to find things to point out about the O'Reilly program that weren't true or took things out of context or really lowered the bar for journalism. So in a lot of ways, O'Reilly was an easy target. He was a very sensitive target who would draw more attention back toward the MSNBC programming.
So the more that Keith Olbermann attacked Fox News, the more attention MSNBC earned.
There is no way to map the depth and breadth of Bill O'Reilly's ego.
It went on for years, and the parent companies did what parents usually do. They let their squabbling children squabble. Until, that is, the kids started involving the parents, and the feud grew corporate.
Instead of attacking MSNBC directly, what Bill O'Reilly would do is go after MSNBC's parent company, General Electric.
Hate speech in the General Electric Corporation. GE misled investors by cooking its books.
Instead of being a schoolyard fight, this suddenly involved two of the biggest media companies in the world.
In O'Reilly's case, it was reporting on a lot of the dangerous and fraudulent activities that General Electric engages in, the way in which they're reliant on government officials, as well as activities that General Electric was engaged in Iran and with the Iranian government that they probably prefer to keep secret.
Federal authorities have developed information about General Electric doing business with Iran. Deadly business. The factor is now vetting the information.
It also became very commercial, with Fox News accusing GE of even helping to build the roadside bombs that were killing American soldiers in Iraq.
The factor has been told, but cannot confirm, that the General Electric Corporation is under suspicion in the case.
Now, it was a very, very tenuous connection, and GE denies all of it, but Fox continued to push that idea as a way of fighting back at MSNBC.
And you've got an unconfirmed report that GE is under suspicion in your unconfirmed report of your unconfirmed investigation. Do you have any facts at all?
In Olbermann's case, he was constantly reporting on the outright lies that regularly spew from both Bill O'Reilly And Fox News,
if I or any actual reporter like me had gotten as much wrong in any story as Bill O'Reilly got wrong in this one, I'd be fired in 15 minutes, as he should be now.
Then, all of a sudden, it stopped. And according to the New York Times' Brian Stelter, the reason it stopped is that the grown-ups, the corporate bigwigs, got involved. GE and News Corp executives met and agreed to order their on-air people to behave to keep the parents out of it.
In the 4 months before this deal happened, Olbermann criticized Rupert Murdoch, the head of News Corporation, about 25 times. In the 2 months that this deal held, before the New York Times wrote about it, he attacked Murdoch twice. So I think the numbers now, in a way, speak for themselves.
GE officials and NBC officials are on the record that there was an edict issued saying, back off of Fox News, take a step back, and it seems that the same kind of order came down on the Fox News side.
The bottom line is that these two networks, who had been at each other's throats for years, suddenly stopped attacking each other. And that's because a deal was made by their parent companies to stop it.
On the surface, the Olbermann-O'Reilly feud is about ratings points and egos. But when one considers the way it ended, the story becomes much bigger than that.
What is clear, and what I think is especially disturbing about this situation, is the fact that NBC or GE was very willing to go to Fox and say, hey, we'll get our guy to back off your guy if you leave this Iran story alone. And it's the idea that that kind of deal could happen. That's the real story here.
I think any time a corporation is appearing to influence news coverage, even if it's in this case just influencing this feud that's happening between two anchors, it's very worrisome, both to people in TV and outside.
And the deal between executives at these two companies, News Corp, which owns Fox, and General Electric, which owns MSNBC, is real censorship because it ends up suppressing information that the public can obtain about these highly significant and consequential corporations.
And if you're looking for more information on this story, you can find it online through Glenn Greenwald, who's at salon.com, firedoglake.com, or Craig Aaron at freepress.net, who will tell you that
the story here isn't, is Bill O'Reilly going to say something mean about Keith Olbermann, or is Keith Olbermann going to mock Bill O'Reilly? The story is that the most powerful media executives in the country get together to decide what's going to go on the air and what isn't.
Here's how our Global Village voices see the battle between the network stars and the prospects for peace on the American airwaves.
The Bill O'Reilly-Keith Olbermann rivalry really serves mostly an entertainment purpose. It's information, but presented in a very opinionated way. And the corporations present this, and people like tuning in. They like to choose either Olbermann or O'Reilly, just like you would a sports team.
Those corporations ultimately answer to their stockholders, who are more concerned with the return on their investment than they are in what's being said on the air by media personalities like Keith Olbermann and Bill O'Reilly.
American cable news is miserable. So given the choice between a regular show that just plows ahead with its own loose use of truth and a show that instead turns around to undermine another component of cable news, we're all a little bit better off when the beast is eating its own tail.
If you'd like to be one of our Global Village voices, there are multiple ways to get in touch. You can email us at listeningpost@aljazeera.net, or just go on Facebook and look for the Listening Post page. You can also follow us and contact us through Twitter. We will let you know via Facebook and Twitter what stories we're working on and how you can get with the program and contribute to our broadcast. Time now for Listening Post News Bites. In a troubling postscript to a 2005 bribery scandal involving members of parliament in India, two journalists central to the story have been charged under the country's Prevention of Corruption law. Aniruddha Bahal and Suhasini Raj of the online news site CobraPost.com went undercover and secretly filmed MPs accepting money in exchange for asking certain questions in Parliament. It was a big story in India. 11 MPs ended up being charged under the anti-corruption law. But now the journalists have been charged with abetting the offense because they misrepresented themselves as businessmen. The charges were laid despite a parliamentary committee praising Cobra Post's video sting operation. The committee said, quote, "We do not hold the media in any way to blame for exposing genuine wrongdoing. They have a duty to inquire and can contribute to the preservation of standards in public life," unquote. A new zero refusal policy in China may be an indication that the authorities there are finally opening up to foreign journalists. Not everyone is buying changes that the Chinese government has announced in the way that it plans to deal with foreign reporters. Under the new policy, the government promises that within 24 hours of getting contacted by foreign media, it will call journalists back and provide them with information. The government also pledges that it will get local governments to provide relevant sources and basic local information to foreign media. A member of the government's State Council Information Office laid out the new approach in the country's main state-run English-language newspaper, the China Daily. Didn't take long, though, for China critics to start shooting holes in the new policy. The Tibetan Review, a monthly magazine, called it a public relations exercise that might help foreign media, but it does not affect the government-controlled domestic media. There's a story out of Brazil that, if the allegations are proven true, will rock the country and its media. Wallace Souza, a policeman turned politician turned crime show presenter, is reported to be under investigation for ordering a series of crimes, including murder, in order to boost ratings. Prosecutors say they suspect that Souza may be responsible for at least 5 murders, that his former security guard has confessed to one of them, and that nearly 20 people have already been arrested in connection with the case. Souza used his show, which was produced in the Amazonian city of Manaus, to rail against lawlessness in Brazil. Saudi Arabia is one of the most conservative Arab states, and it's dealing with the aftermath of a broadcasting episode that was just too racy not to be a scandal. The show was broadcast on LBC, a Lebanon-based channel, and featured a Saudi Arabian named Mazan Abdul Jawad openly discussing his sex life from his Jeddah apartment. Islamic clerics were not amused, neither were the authorities. They arrested Abdul Jawad and shut down the television channel's Saudi offices. Saudi Arabian TV is very tame, which might explain why an estimated 98% of Saudi households have satellite dishes so they can watch more liberal programming from places like Beirut, Dubai, and Cairo. The LBC scandal does put the Saudi royal family in a bit of a delicate position. Prince Al-Walid bin Talal, the nephew of King Abdullah, owns the channel. We're back after the break with a piece about the media, martyrs, and double standards.